Then I traveled back to Kenya for about 3.5 years, and now I am back. My major is accounting. However, I'm transitioning to financial crime and also academia. So that is where I'm headed to. And it's also, when it comes to financial crime, it's all about trying to see how the financial statements can be reported in the correct way, making sure we are going through the controls and making sure that the systems are actually, the controls are good and they're being followed, and that whoever who has access to the system is a person who is supposed to have the controls or is supposed to have logged into the system. So I'm very thankful to be in this panel.
Thank you so much. Miss Jennifer Wiley, I've given our name today, Cheruto.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me as part of the panel. My name is Jennifer Wiley, and I went to my undergraduate studies for criminal justice at Westchester University of Pennsylvania. I moved on to New Mexico State University for my master's degree in criminal justice, and then I headed to the field. In the field, I worked with sexual offenders in the supervision unit in Raleigh, North Carolina. I also earned a field search certificate with KB Solutions, where we would search the computers of sex offenders, and also RemoteCom, which is a software where we'll be able to monitor the sex offenders' activity online. We also used a little bit of Knopics, which is another program. And last but not least, I have a certificate in clandestine grave search and recovery.
All right. As everybody has introduced themselves, so we'll go back and start with Dr. Brown. This is a group of a Professional Criminology Association of Kenya. Can you tell us more about the Department of the area of criminal justice? Why you got into that field, the department that you're chairing now, the opportunities, the undergraduate programs that you have, the master's programs that you have, and then the other program that you have with Homeland Security.
Sure. So first, I want to note that criminal justice and criminology are interdisciplinary fields. I was very purposeful when I shared that my background. I started off as a political science major. I thought that my career path was going to be through the law, through becoming a lawyer, which many people associate with how we should be dealing with crime and justice. And I found that while I was very interested in the political process and how that is related to crime and justice, that there were more opportunities to impact crime and justice than being a lawyer. So one of the first things that I encourage everyone to think about, as I do with my students and prospective students, the law is not the only way to have an impact on crime and justice. It can be an important and powerful way. My big dream was to become a judge, and we need people to take on those roles. But we should all be careful about limiting our thinking and our approach to crime and criminology and justice by people only being in those roles. I always make an analogy to something like the Great Wall of China. We need people at all spots on the wall doing good work. We need people to be good law enforcement officers and to be patrol officers. We need people to be good supervisors in justice agencies and chiefs and judges. We need people who will work with juveniles. We need people who will work with at-risk populations. We need people who will work with those who have been punished for crimes. They're labeled as criminals, and we want to keep them out of the system, keep them from engaging in crime. We need people who are oriented toward being treatment providers, social workers, mental health providers. All of those components are a part of our crime problem, the administration of justice, and our justice-based solutions. I think it's also important to emphasize an interdisciplinary approach when we think about what's happening today, the intersection between crime and public health. I assume in Kenya and in other parts of the world, just like the US, we have people who are in custody. They're in jails and prisons, and we're all dealing with the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. How do we provide appropriate health care for people who they've committed a crime and now they are under the control of the state, and the state has the responsibility for their safety and well-being? How do we address that? How do we address people who work for the government and they have to supervise and provide treatment to individuals who are in custody? Those are important issues. In short, criminology, there are many rooms in the house of criminology and criminal justice.
Mhm.
And I strongly encourage people to take their path to dealing with crime and justice. I noted that my background, I have a 1 degree specializing in criminology and corrections. And like Professor Wiley noted, after earning some degrees going to work in the field, I used to be what is called a mitigation specialist. I used to do parole plans for prisoners and death penalty mitigation. I used to work on behalf of people who were sentenced to death to try to get their sentences commuted to life in prison. And when I went back to school to become Dr. Brown, through some circumstances and some research opportunities, I discovered the world of policing. Most notably, I discovered that very few people of color formally study law enforcement. Very few are formally trained in the research and the knowledge and having the backgrounds to work in law enforcement. Many people of color are scholars and have interests where they critique law enforcement and know about many of the challenges, but as far as having the credentials and the backgrounds to be considered a policing or a law enforcement expert, that's not a path that many people of color, at least in the United States, tend to choose. And that was a part of the reason why I chose that path. And if you were to Google Dr. Brown and you were to look at my research, I'm recognized as a policing scholar, but in reality, I focus on corrections. I still do research that deals with juveniles and at-risk youth. And I still work to find alternatives to incarceration, alternatives to formal processing. I've just been able to leverage that research and those interests through my background as a policing scholar. At North Carolina Central, criminal justice is the largest undergraduate major on campus. If you were to go to the university's website, you would see that. We have approximately 700 undergraduate majors, and I think the next department probably has around 550. The next largest department has around 550 majors. And I hope when we get to talking in this conversation, we can talk about the connections between crime and justice and physical education programs that target young people and young adults. That we can talk about how crime in some communities make it less safe for some people to just walk or jog or take advantage of parks and recreation areas. Again, criminology and criminal justice should not just be limited to television and movies and the bad people and the cops, so to speak, the bad guys, organized crime, and the police. Crime and justice touches us in so many different ways. As a program goes, again, we're the largest major on campus. We offer concentrations in the areas of corrections, juvenile justice, homeland security, and law enforcement. Students majoring in criminal justice here at Central have the opportunity to focus their studies in those 4 areas. We have a graduate program, a master's degree in criminal justice, and students are able to tailor their studies in the areas of law enforcement, corrections, juvenile justice. We have a lot of people who use our degree as their springboard to go on to law school or to go on to get degrees in social work and such. Geronimo, how's that for a start?
That is great. That is great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. So thank you so much. We'll come back to questions later. I'm going to go to Noreen.
I can hear you, Chirona. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Noreen.
So I like what Dr. Robert said. It doesn't have to be tied just to the movies and the social media and what have you, right? We live with it on a day-to-day basis. It's your next door neighbor. It's where you, when you're driving to work, when you're driving home, right? It's all around us, and it touches the human element from what I learned from his what the career is offering, and I would recommend a lot of students to look into that. You can also branch it for those who are taking even computer classes, computer science, computer engineering, anything to do even with cybersecurity. You can relate what Dr. Robert said, because it intertwines with our day-to-day activities and our day-to-day lives, right? In cybersecurity, they have a course which is called the digital forensics, which goes into the investigations, right? Understanding why the pattern of behavior we're seeing with these crimes, and understanding that pattern of behavior, it's able to help us to resolve those particular issues. So having that broad set of mind concept of understanding the whole picture as instead of just going to the root cause, which is mostly preferred than just having the assumption or a stereotype, right? Erasing those stereotype mentality, but being able to resolve the root cause of why such crimes are taking place is very important. And for the students who are listening, you're in the right path. You can take this career in every different arena you want in your life. You can go into deep dive investigation like Dr. Robert offered. You can go into forensics, for example, right? You can also be just on the front line, or even the one who's helping to write the code and the law. So I like the idea of the program. Even for they who have graduated, you have to have a broader perspective of don't just narrow yourself just to criminology or criminal justice. Like Jennifer said, you have to adventure. Like she took several programs and several careers in her arena. So you can have that perspective also for your career going forward. That's what I have to say, Sharona.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Noreen. We'll come back to you with questions. Let's go to Miss Wiley. Tell us everything that you've done and how you ended up in Kenya and what you do in Kenya. So start with your background, what you've done at your work, what you do, and then how you ended up in Kenya and what programs you're doing in Kenya.
Sure. So whenever I left school, I decided to work with the Department of Correction, which is now Department of Public Safety, and I was a supervision officer. I moved up to the Raleigh area, which is a larger city in North Carolina, and I was working with the sex offender population. That position allowed me to work closely with all three components of our criminal justice system here in the United States. I got to work with the police, the correction, and also corrections. We would do parole reports out of prison and supervise the sex offenders, and also work with the sheriff's department in the law enforcement section, making sure that there's compliance with these offenders. Here in North Carolina, they can't live within 1,000 feet of a school or a daycare while being on the registry as a sex offender. Also here in the United States, you have to register as a sex offender after the court proceedings if convicted. So we would supervise those individuals in the community. And the county that I worked in has the largest number for our state, just over 700 sex offenders registered. So it was a very large caseload and issue in our community. We also got to work with the courts, so we would return offenders to court whenever there would be a violation. So it might be that at the time they weren't allowed to have social media accounts here at the time. Now they can, but at the time they could not. And so anytime we would find a violation of whether it be pornography on their computer from one of the searches that we would do, or other items they're not allowed to have, we would work with the courts to return them and potentially put them back into jail or prison. After I left the field, I joined academia. So I worked for our community college system here in North Carolina for some time, and then I joined at North Carolina Central. So I'm glad to be there. And so I've been working with Dr. Brown for about a year now, almost a year. And also for the last 7 years, I've been back and forth to Kenya. In Kenya, I work with a girls program in Kibera, which is just outside of Nairobi. You might be familiar with Kibera. And we have a girls empowerment, women's empowerment, and a skills project. So we work with the girls either after school and also on weekends. We have a girls empowerment coordinator, a skills teacher, and a women's empowerment teacher as well. We cover topics such as self-worth, being assertive, and then some of the other issues that they deal with in the community. So I've been back and forth for about 7 years now, and I'm actually supposed to be there now. But as we know, COVID has put a pause on those plans.
Great, 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 great. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you. That is interesting. We'll come back with questions. Let's go to Miss Kenywa. Tell us what a little bit about what you do and what the connection between what you do and criminology.
Yes, my major, as I had mentioned, is in accounting. I'm an accounting manager, and as I also mentioned, that I'm trying to transition, or rather I'm transitioning to financial crime. So even with criminology, I know when I was growing up, I wanted to be a detective. It's so funny that even when you grow, the things that you wanted to become, they come alive when you're all grown. So when you look at the shows that CSI, that we see on TV, a detective is a person who is basically going to look after, to go after the wrong doers. But when it comes to accounting or financial crime, you're looking for where can a system be broken, or how can people decide to use the money for any company in the wrong way. There's also anti-money laundering. So with criminology, it can be, even when you're in IT, you can decide to see how the systems can have that protective measure, so that a crime does not happen. Or when a crime happens, then you also have the measure of how can we know that it has happened. So even with accounting, financial crime is the same. We try to see that the systems they have controls, that we don't have a manager and somebody on the floor, that they have access to either the bank account, or they have access to some of the system scenarios whereby a manager has. They should not be, that's not the same with a person on the ground. So it's everywhere. I believe it's in every career.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And Miss Caroline Kimani?
Yeah, with my auditing background, I think my part of being a criminologist is where we actually do a risk assessment, fraud risk assessment, and helping organizations or companies to realize where things can go wrong. So our main focus is to educate the management on how to prevent and how to deter fraud. The CFE accreditation is very, very important and has played a big role in my career, because once you go through the training, you're able to identify the red flags or where fraud can be happening. And as of now, especially at this COVID time, people are coming up with different frauds. So it doesn't stop. It changes every day. So you have to keep up. And with the CFE, you have to keep up with the training too, so you can learn more of the frauds that are coming up. So, and as for the students, I know one of the member who is a founder of PSAT is actually a CFE, and that's how we actually connected, because a CFE is global, is a global profession, and it just makes you aware of anything that looks fraudulent. So when I hear people talking, I just think about how fraudulent that idea can be. So I'm always in the risk of that might not be true, or maybe that's fraudulent. Yeah, that's my take.
Very good. Thank you so much. I'm going to come back with follow-up questions, but right now we have a special guest all the way from Kenya, and I'd like to invite Mr. Rishi Aron. I may not say that name right. Can you give us a little bit background about this program, this organization, and just give us an overview on how it got started and what are some of the things that you do?
Nice. Thank you, Professor. I hope you can hear me well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Basically, FISAC is almost a year and a half now, where we all got together and decided to create an association which would really help fill in the gaps now, where the actual scenario of crime is concerned, with affiliation with the government institutions and all that. There is always a gap, in the sense you need to implement laws into the real life society and all that. So PISAC was created by FC Munene Mugambi, and this was his vision that we need to fill in the gaps where our society is concerned. Where Kenya is concerned, just like Caroline mentioned, new things keep coming up every day. New forms of crime keep coming up every day. People are not sensitive towards what is going on. To them, it is a normality. But where the actual scenario goes, where the law goes, we need to understand that this is right, this is wrong. So PISAC was born. We have quite a good membership right now with all you eloquent ladies, which I see right now. And we are climbing. We are really climbing at a very good rate. We are bringing on board like-minded people. Ours is to now sensitize, train the Kenyan public also, and the world at large, that this is what needs to be done. This is the law. This is how it's interpreted. And it's all about the key word here, which Caroline used also, which is auditing. When something does go wrong, you now audit, you backtrack and go to the source and find out how things happened and all that.
We can't hear you. Yeah, okay. We lost you for a little bit. Okay.
No, that was it. That was my initial response.
Okay, good. Let me ask you a quick question, a follow-up question. So what are some of the challenges that you've encountered right now? Are we encountering any challenges, and how are you handling that?
Quite a number of challenges. Resistance is one of them, whereby people need to be updated with the latest scenarios, technology and all, and interpretation of the law. This is where the challenges arise, whereby you're supposed to know what the law says, but the general public doesn't have an idea what the law says. And for them, lack of education or even lack of access to the law scenarios and all that is one of the issues. So it's all about filling in that gap now as criminologists, that look, these are your rights, this is what you need to do, this is what people what is right and wrong.
Thank you so much. I think we lost you for a little bit. Okay, all right. So I'm gonna go back to Dr. Brown, and when Caroline is going to check on the questions for us. Dr. Brown, you say that there are very few people who are trained as law enforcement, especially the African American community. Is there a reason for that? And what are you all doing to increase the number of people who are interested in that?
Geronimo, you froze on my end for a minute. Can you repeat the question?
Okay, good. Okay, I'm sorry. So what you said in your presentation is that there are very few African Americans or people of color who are trained in law enforcement. Most of us go into the academy or go into academics. Is there a reason why the interest is low, and what are you doing to increase that interest in that field?
Yes. So while we do have, as particularly out of Central, the law enforcement concentration for our students is our largest concentration. And we have a good number of students who are interested in working as police officers, whether it be at the local level, state level, or federal level. Many of our students want to be federal officers, as Noreen pointed out, and others, they want to be CSI, they want to be FBI, they have a US Marshal, they talk about those dreams. On the academic side, though, there tends to be, I think for historical reasons, an anti-policing perspective, to a point where people do not see the value of studying the police directly. They tend to want to look at policing issues through juveniles, or they're interested in being, as scholars, race scholars. They're interested in focusing on racial injustice and issues. So they focus their reading, their learning, their coursework on issues related to race instead of understanding that there's a rich, very strong literature base and history of race-related research in the policing field. I think that part of it is when do you break the cycle? I've never had a person of color teach me a course on policing. I've had a person of color teach a course where we covered something about policing, like a current issue, but I've never had a Black policing scholar or a brown policing scholar who could guide me to work that's oftentimes written by speaking of police. I've never had a tour guide. If your teacher or your professor is a tour guide, you will not go down, you're going to follow the road, the tour that they give you. And depending on who your tour guide is, you may be more in tune to what you see. I think that, again, there are unfortunately not a lot of people who choose to be academic tour guides. And when they do, they choose other areas. And all of the other areas, as we have noted, are fair areas to study. We here at Central, and I've dedicated my career at Central and at other institutions, I've dedicated myself to helping students understand there are books, there are research articles, there are ways to systematically and formally study police departments and make a difference.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brown. I know when I came to North Carolina Central, I keep saying A&T Central, you've been one of my greatest mentors, and I really appreciate working to you. You're one of the most seasoned department chairs.
Don't believe
so I
it.
love working under you and getting your mentorship and support. I really appreciate that. I'm gonna go back to a question for Noreen while Caroline is getting all the questions from the members. Noreen, I know you do a lot of work with mentoring women in cybersecurity. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you do that? Yes, you do a great job. And for our
Mentoring.
Yes, go ahead.
Mentoring is very an idea that's very passionate to me, because I realize in order to help the next generation or even the current generation, we have to help out each other. I need you, you need me. You can't do it by yourself, right? And like they say, iron sharpeneth iron. So we have to exchange ideas and brainstorm with each other. For the women, I have, like I said, I'm the president of the Women in Cybersecurity here in North Carolina. So we get to meet on a monthly basis where we get to educate, inspire, motivate, answer any questions, do speed mentoring, share knowledge, resources, what have you, right? And throughout the month, we continue to stay in touch just to make sure that everybody is abreast into this technology. On top of the women's program, I also run the Global Mentoring Program, which I host every other Saturday on Cisco WebEx. And anybody all around the world can join. Last Saturday, we had over 1,000-something plus people where you can join and just ask your question, right? And I have tons of several other my fellow coworkers and other people who volunteer in the cybersecurity industry just to join the session and answer any questions that anybody may be having. During the sessions, we also get to do a small presentation to learn about the current technology. And I like that we're talking about criminology and criminal justice right here, because if you look at the crimes that used to happen back then are not the crimes of today, right? In cybersecurity too, the threat that I was chasing yesterday has changed to today. The threat actor has become very informative every day, right? They keep changing their tactics and techniques. Same applies to criminology, right? The same behaviors, they change tweaks in here. If they used to break-ins, now they're longer break-ins, they're doing something else. If it's not money laundering, they're doing ransomware attacks. It's not ransomware attacks, they're doing phishing scams where you open your computer, all your files are gone. You can't even access them, right? So in that perspective, I have to mentor people to understand every time you're looking into any specific threat, you have to answer the 5 questions. When did the attack occur, right? Where did it occur, right? How did it occur? When did it occur? When you can answer those basic questions, you'll be able to analyze the situation. And even in your career, you need a mentor to help you to launch. Yes, you've done your education. I usually emphasize to my team the 3 E's: education, experience, and exposure. You get your education, good. How are you going to get your experience? Networking. If you don't network with people, I'm sorry, it's tough. And gone are the days where you thought you could do it by yourself. You have to network with others. I may know somebody else who connect you with somebody else. I knew Caroline who connected me with Chirono. Chirono now connected me with Dr. Robert and Jennifer here and Rishini and Ruth, right? And now Power Dynamite panel right here. So we have to continue mentoring each other. And if somebody taps you to be a mentor and you cannot take on that responsibility at that time, you can pass it on to somebody else. And also for the mentees, I always tell them, once I mentor you and you've achieved your mastery of whatever skill set you're doing, I also ask you to pass it on to somebody else. Don't be selfish. Help one another so that we can make the industry better. People can connect, they can join the sessions. We have it there, Chiron. I think I posted there on LinkedIn. They can join the session, register for free. Come, it doesn't matter whether you've been in the industry or you're trying to log into the industry or you've been seasoned in the industry. Everybody is welcome. You get to live there. If you're a mentee looking for a mentor, you live with a mentor. If you're a mentor looking for mentees, you live with several mentees, right? And if we impact the community that way, we're gonna change the whole landscape of keeping people busy doing productive work and keeping people idle. And then all these crimes we always have to continue to keep solving. That's
Great, great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm gonna go to Ms. Wiley. I know you said you've worked with sex offenders. You know, what are your experiences with that? Because personally, I've had an experience that I'm very, I have an experience with them, and I've really, most of us have a fear towards them. What are some of the experiences that you had with them, and what are some of the interventions that you did, and what advice would you give to those sex offenders out there who are trying to run away from the law?
Thank you. So I've been working with sex offenders in the past when I worked with the Department of Public Safety. And some of the things that we dealt with were more of the supervision aspect, holding them accountable in the community, making sure that they do fulfill their conditions and all the guidelines. So we've run into things such as moving a residence without notifying the sheriff's department or the officer for supervision and having to track them back down again. And when they do that, that's another felony charge here in the state of North Carolina. We've also, the experiences I've had of doing searches of the home or a computer and finding inappropriate child pornography or other images that they're not allowed to possess and having to return that to court. Also new offenses in the community, which are very unfortunate. So it's a range of experiences when working with this population. Some of the interventions that the community has here, we have a lot of treatment providers where they're required to go to treatment under supervision. We also utilize the prison time or split sentence option with some of these offenders. We monitor the treatment attendance and progress. So we work closely with the treatment providers to determine their progress in the program. We also have a registry, which is every convicted sex offender of a registrable offense has to be on this registry. In North Carolina, it's at least 10 years. You have to petition the Superior Court to come off the registry after 10 years. Some people successfully do that and others do not. So we also have that registry where anybody can go online and put in their home address or another address of interest and find out which sex offenders live within a vicinity of that address. So you can do a 3-mile radius, a 5-mile radius, and you can see who comes up on the map as to who lives near you. So we have those tools for awareness, but again, it's working with the law enforcement and the courts, also corrections, to make sure that we can address this population in the community. With changing technology, the way in which they commit crime changes as well, especially with the computers. Again, with sharing of files and information, and now the way in which they might contact a potential victim. has also changed today using technology and the social media and chat boxes and things of that nature. Some of the other technology that we use to help supervise is we used to have ankle monitors where it would tell their whereabouts at any given time. We could track them on our computer. We have some that were ordered to lifetime monitoring on the ankle bracelet and some that are not. So there are a variety of tools that we use in the community to help manage this population.
Very good. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask this question. I'm going to target my Kenyan colleagues who understand the system there. The question is, how can the diaspora team help the upcoming criminologists meet the aspirations of productive engagement in the criminal justice system? You know, now that you have both experiences with here and Kenya, what are some of those challenges in the system and how can we help? And then, you know, my other colleague, Dr. Brown and Ms. Wiley can jump on it. Ms. Kenya.
Thank you, Dr. Cherono. One of the things I believe is what, number one is what Noreen mentioned. There's that mentor and mentee relationship. And just having such forums and workshop whereby, you know, we have presentation, you can come on and, you know, just have people who are already in criminology that who can explain what they're doing, you will get insights out of that. Another way is just even in those forums, just to know what is being practiced in Kenya and then what is being practiced in the US. What can they, when I stayed in Kenya for about 3.5 years, I was engaged in anti-money laundering workshop. And one of the scenario was the NYS case, where out of that case, they ended up saying that if you go and withdraw out at least 1 million Kenya shillings, then you have to indicate why you're withdrawing. So basically they get to ask you many questions before you withdraw. While in the US, they have a cap of $3,000 US, which is about $300 US. So if you deposit 300 Kenya shillings or $3,000 US here in the US, or if you withdraw, you're entered in the system, you're entered whereby they can investigate and get to know how you got that money. In Kenya, they did not have that. Right now, they are capping it at 1 million, which I believe is also a large amount of money. It needs to come down to even less than 1 million. So just what is being done in Kenya, what is being done that are being done in the US, what can we borrow and implement in Kenya? I believe that will be a very good forum.
Thank you so much. Ms. Caroline, any input on that with your experience in auditing?
Well, my take on that is grassroots training. Like law should be introduced like when the kids are growing up. Like, because what happened in Kenya, we wait until we are in college, and that's when you're told about you're not supposed to drive where you're drunk. But when you're young, you didn't hear anything about law, because from where we come from, we believe law or anything to do with policies and all that stuff is for maybe the members of parliament or MCAs or, so we're not interested in learning why do we have the law of the land and how to follow. So we have the law, but it's never trained. So if we can start with, when kids are going to primary school, when kids are going to grade 1, they're taught about you have to follow the law. I think we're gonna have another generation of people who knows what is in the law, who can interpret law, and who can actually implement the law. And that way, maybe it will help with solving all these issues of crime, and people know why I broke the law and why I have to face the consequences.
Okay, Ms. Noreen, any additions to that? Do you have anything to add to that?
I echo what Caroline and Ruth have said. Yeah, mentoring, learning the law. And I think also maybe for those who are seasoned in this career, maybe you can also volunteer to create a more interactive training session where somebody can understand in simpler terms, because sometimes we speak in very complex terms where maybe not everybody understands. Break it simple, like you're talking maybe to an 8-year-old, and that way somebody can be able to understand, because maybe people don't even know what's the real issue here, right? But if you break it in a way whereby an 8-year-old can understand, this is what the law abides. Because sometimes when you go read even those law codes, you don't even understand maybe what section 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever it's saying. But those who are seasoned in this career, if they can take that law and break it in a layman language where anyone can understand in simpler terms, I think that can help bridge both sections.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I'm going to go back to a quick question to Ms. Wiley. I know from my experience, and Dr. Brown mentioned that we are in recreation, kinesiology, and we're looking at health and wellness and really encouraging people to get out there and exercise and stay healthy. One of the reasons why people do not get out as often as they would like to do is because of unsafe neighborhoods. You know, walking around the parks and recs. So there's there tend to be some places where people are very afraid of utilizing or using the parks and recs in their community because of crime rates are very high. So you don't see them walking around the neighborhoods or going to the parks or being alone there. And I know something, so what are your thoughts, or how do we address that? And I know something, when I was talking with Ms. Wiley the other day, she mentioned that that could be an issue that some of our girls are encountering in Kibera. Ms. Wiley, has that been an experience, and how have you addressed that? How have you helped the girls to be able to get out and move around and do what they're doing without the fear of all these people?
Your audio broke up there, so I didn't quite catch the end of that. I'm sorry. If you can share that again.
So, okay, my question was, from your experience with your girls program in Kibera, have they encountered any fear of security, or moving around or walking around or doing things around? Have you encountered any issues with security when you walk around, when you do things in Kibera with your girls?
I personally have not. The community overall, when I'm there, I've not had any issues with that. However, whenever the girls do come on Saturday, or we have a chance to talk with them one-on-one, sometimes they do share the experience that they've had in the community, either being out and about, you know, in the evening, or at other times that they've shared their experiences of sexual abuse and other violence. So that's been something that the girls do want to talk about sometimes, and that they've shared their experiences with us.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Rishi, are you still there? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask you a question, and then our panelists can give their closing comments. How do you see the diaspora partnering with you? How can we partner together as diaspora in this effort? And what are some of them? Do you have any partnerships currently with other people from diaspora or from other countries?
Yes, we do. PSAC does have a partnership with one of our senior patrons, Dr. Bailey. And the main thing here would be exchange and understanding of case studies, which you might be experiencing back in US. Obviously, Kenya is a totally different setup of a society. I am a director of the Liquor Control Board in Mombasa, and you should see the challenges I go through regulating alcoholism, regulating bars and pubs. The moment you explain the Liquor Act to the bar owner, for example, you will notice he has 10 ways to go around it. By the time you go and find out what exactly he did, he's already 3 steps ahead of you.
Wow.
My hands as a director are tied by the law. I can't go to his outlet and shut it down. I have to follow due process. That due process takes 3 months. By that time, my good friend, the bar owner, is already at a higher tertiary level sorting out other things, including drugs, including what do you say, exploitation of young girls and all that. It's a
Mm.
challenge. But if in case we were to implement similar cases which you might have in US, it would give us a head start, and we could block this particular ways of making things wrong in the society. It's a challenge. In fact, Caroline mentioned a very good point where early childhood education is concerned. Engaging children in school. We have done similar programs in Kenya where alcoholism is explained, pros, cons, and all that. Obviously, there's no pros, but it's all about being negative about it. Simple example I can give you is garbage littering. In Kenya, you have your chocolate. I'm sorry, I hope none of you is hungry right now. You have your chocolate, you crumple the wrapper, and off it goes on the street. We had a good campaign with the children started in class 1, 2, and 3, picking up litter, putting it in their bag, and going to the bins and disposing it correctly. They go home and they see Baba or Mama taking the wrapper and just throwing it out of the window, and they say, no, don't do that. Put it in the wrapper and put it in the garbage tin. Imagine the impact to the society.
Mm.
That is what we need to do. So where you are concerned, obviously crime is crime, wherever you go in any part of the world. But it's the way you have to handle. In Kenya, you have to handle it differently. In US, you are handling it differently. But you can't compare the two because the modus operandi is different. But yes, we can use good points in exchange programs or case studies. Okay, this was what was done when an incident of this sort of thing happened. So that way we can have very good interaction.
Thank you so much. And we have a guest. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that comment. And, we'll continue to work together to see how we can collaborate. I'm going to invite.
Can I add something?
Yes, I was going to, yes, go ahead.
Several at this point in a different way.
Yes.
I think who have supposedly made it, those of us who are in positions to mentor, I think that it is really important that we help those who are trying to come along, help them understand what they want to do, what they want to do to make a difference, and how they want to make that difference. That could be done academically, that could be done professionally. Some people, their interest and their talent is to be that officer or to be that person in the field, to be in that situation where when that troublesome thing is happening, they're in a position to do something about it, to try to fix it. Some other people, their talent is going to be the pen. They're going to be in a policy-making position, or they're going to be a messenger. And that's fine too. I think that sometimes we get caught up, or the world allows us to get caught up in very simplistic ways of fixing things. That you can only make a difference if you have a badge or if you work in the system. You can only make a difference if you're an educator or a trainer. I think that we should make sure that we show people, if you want to make a difference, if this is what you want to do, here are different ways that you can approach this issue. And I think all of us are living examples of those different ways of tackling the problem. I miss working directly with offenders. Love doing what I'm able to do now. And as a young lad, I never, ever, ever thought of becoming Dr. Brown, a teacher, a professor, whatever they want to call it. As a matter of fact, people would have laughed and said the opposite. But here I am, and this is what we're able to do. So think about that as we help mentor people, that we want to have an impact.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brown, and we look forward to Jennifer and I will take you to Kenya soon, and all of us will take you to Kenya so we can start that mentoring program. I'm gonna give all the speakers now to make their final comments and closing comments. What advice would you have? And there's a question here that has been brought, so you can address that in your final comments. How can technology in the US help to define the face of terrorism? So you can give your closing comments and see if you can address that question. Each panelist has 2 minutes to give their closing comments. We'll start with Ms. Noreen, Ms. Joroge.
Yes, Cherono, you
I'm breaking. Hello?
yeah.
Yes, we'll start with Ms. Joroge. Did you hear my question?
No,
Okay, I'm sorry.
that's okay.
Okay, so there's a question that has been shared here is, how can technology in the US help to define the face of terrorism? Or how can we utilize technology to address terrorism? So you can respond to that and then you make your closing comments. Each panelist has 3 minutes to do that, and we'll start with Ms. Joroge.
Yes, I'll be glad to answer the question. What was the first part of the question, Cherono? Because you cut out again.
How can technology in the US, technology and terrorism, how can we use that to define terrorism?
I think what I can say for me is knowledge sharing, exchanging the knowledge, like Dr. Robert said, sharing the knowledge with others, doing a lot of educating and mentoring others. And one key last thing I want to leave the audiences with: be adaptable to change, because change is inevitable. A lot of things will be thrown your way you might not be prepared for, but be adaptable to change, and that will help you be able to navigate in your career, no matter which way you take it. Remember, you are the captain of your ship, so you can go either way on how you direct it. But remember, reach out to mentors, reach out to others, keep networking, and we're here to help you.
Thank you so much. Ms. Kinyua?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Cherono. Just to answer on the technology, how it's in the USA and to help define the face of terrorism. What I've seen in the US, the systems talk to each other. The different bodies in this country, the system talk to each other. In Kenya, the bodies more of a standalone on itself. So you find there's this body that does, if just having a technology whereby a bank system can also speak to a lawyer system in one way or another. Just the different bodies systems speaking to one another, they will be able to curb a lot of terrorism. And also in my final comments here is that we all have a duty to do. We are all equipped and blessed in our own way. And for us to have that change in the world, change in Kenya, change in the US, it will be an overflow of what we already have. So it may take some time, especially in Kenya, since it's a growing economy, growing world. But if we continue to pour out what we have been given, what blessings we have, eventually there will be that overflow of that change. As Rishi was saying, that when you teach a child and the child goes and teaches the parents on whether it's loitering or having papers everywhere, it's just a day at a time we continue to speak to them to outflow what we have been given. Eventually we will come to win.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brown.
I want to echo what has been said, and because a colleague and a friend made a phone call. Your network is a resource. I can tell you, I'm not sure, I cannot see everyone who's watching this, but I can tell you that I've already made new connections and new colleagues. I can tell you what we will be doing. We will be exchanging information. We will be looking for ways to continue to support things like this, and to support each other. If you are looking to be mentored, bring something to the table, and that something is your energy,
Thank you so
your
much.
commitment.
Wonderful.
You cannot mentor someone who does not want to be mentored. You do not have to be in a position of power to be mentored. You do not have to bring something to the table as far as money or something you can do for me or one.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Brown. Ms. Caroline Kimani?
Dr. Brown and Ruth have said everything, but and once you get in like this profession of like becoming a fraud examiner, you're trying to see the world in another face of like with no fraud. So you want to pretty much help others understand what is wrong when everybody is fraudulent or when everybody lies. So if you want to be a change, you have to change yourself and to have like high level of integrity. And I know I'm not supposed to say this, but most of my people from my country, that has been a problem, especially with integrity, and that has caused us to be where we are. So if we all could exercise a lot of integrity, that could change the way we look at things, the way we look at life, the way we will deal with fraud. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ms. Wiley?
We didn't hear you.
Ms. Wiley? Jennifer?
Hi, yes, I'm here. I guess one of the biggest things is building relationships and collaborating. Agencies do that so they can maximize their ability to detect or investigate crime or even prevent it. So in taking that building relationship and collaborating, doing that in the field with other professionals, maintaining your network, making sure that you also keep involved with that continued education, updating your certificates, finding something new in the field that will add to your credentials. The field changes over time. It does. Laws change, policies, practices change, so it's important to stay current in the field. So continuing that education and also building on your network, because you can't do it by yourself. It's definitely a network and relationships.
Thank you so much. Mr. Rishi?
Thank you, Professor. When you give someone a chance to speak last, he or she won't be remaining anything to talk about. But let me just add one point. We need to maintain or start with a centralized information sharing system, whereby people can share information regarding anything and everything worldwide. Noreen, I'm your colleague where Cisco is concerned. I guess you have an idea what I'm trying to say. It's all about networking, recording of information, and then sharing it as white papers future-wise. So anyone working on a certain scenario can be worked on. On my closing remark, I wish to thank all of you on behalf of PSAC, on behalf of all Kenyans, to be part of this very good webinar, and we have shared a lot of information. My special asante to Dr. Brown and me to maintain we were the only two bearded gentlemen who gave each other company in front of all the pretty ladies around. Thank you.
Rishi, Dr. Brown, did you hear that?
I did.
I think that is Corona. I think that is Corona beard.
A little bit.
A little bit of that. So I really want to thank all of you. What I've heard is education, experience, empowerment, exposure, mentoring, relationships, networks, collaboration. Change has to start from us. We all need all hands on deck to get this addressed. So this is a problem that is not going to take one person. We all need to come together because this is an issue that affects all of us in so many ways. So again, I do want to thank all of you. I've enjoyed having you on this. We've enjoyed being together on this panel. It's been 1 hour. I promise to keep it to 1 hour. Thank you so much. We hope to maintain those relationships and to work together with CPAC, PSAC, Dr. Rishi, Mr. Rishi. So let's see how we can stay together, we can engage and continue this relationship. For those of you who are interested in pursuing our master's program or degree program at North Carolina Central, please email one of us and we'll be more than glad to share that information and to walk you through the process of applying, especially as an international student. Thank you so much, and you have a wonderful day. Our listeners, you have a good night. Make sure you get on before the curfew because we don't want you to get in trouble. Thank you. This is our team from Grace from North Carolina. Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you and God bless everyone.
Don't leave. Okay, I stopped the live stream, so I think we're good. Okay. Okay, nice to see you, Mr. Rishi.
I'm sorry, Professor, I didn't get you.
I said thank you so much for joining us.
No problem. Anytime, madam.
Thank you, everybody.
In fact, there was an apology from FC Munene. He was
Yes.
supposed to join us, but I think he was held up in some work.
Yes, he did.
I hope I have behaved well.